1. Is it a sin to offer roasted pig in return?
Question: I pray to the gods. When my son gets a job in Australia, he will offer a roast pig as payment. Now my child has a job. But, after listening to the monks preach about the sin of killing, I don't want to offer roasted pig anymore. So now, is it okay if I offer fruit to repay the favor?
Answer: Faith is a precious virtue of Buddhists. But it's important to put your trust in the right place. To be more clear, Buddhists must have righteous faith. Buddhists who do not believe deeply in cause and effect are not yet Buddhists. Instead of believing in cause and effect, Buddhists place their faith in demon gods. Because he believed in the blessing of the devil, the Buddhist prayed for his son to quickly find a job. When Buddhists beg and pray, their supplication is to offer roasted pig in return. After praying, the Buddhist's son was fortunate to have a job. Now, Buddhists have changed their minds because they are afraid of committing the crime of killing living beings. So don't Buddhists fear God's anger? Because Buddhists have deceived gods. That's another mistake Buddhists make, lacking the virtue of sincerity. I would like to answer this question in two ways, then it is up to Buddhists to consider and decide. First, if Buddhists offer roasted pig exactly as they prayed, because Buddhists believe so, they must accept the crime of killing living beings. Suppose, now I advise Buddhists to make offerings in return with fruit. After offering, if everything goes smoothly and nothing happens to the Buddhist son or family, then everything is okay. But, if something happens, in life, how can cause and effect be known in advance? It will be because I advised you to worship like that this happened. Because, although Buddhists have taken refuge in the three jewels, their beliefs are different. That means Buddhists do not have enough faith in the three jewels. While Buddhists take refuge in the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Buddha clearly taught, after taking refuge in Buddha, Buddhists cannot take refuge in gods, demons, or things. Buddhists consider heaven, gods, demons, and objects more important than Buddha, so they pray like that. Because Buddhists do not have enough faith in Buddha, they beg and pray to the demon god. If we take this a little further, based on cause and effect, then the son of a Buddhist can get a job, not because the Buddhist begged and prayed. That's just the cause and effect of the son of a Buddhist. Let's ask the question, if we only need to beg and beg to get a job, then, in this country of Australia, how many people have jobs? Do they all have to beg and beg to offer roast pigs? Why do people not beg for anything but still have jobs? Perhaps, it all depends on their ability and will. Jobs in Australia have many different jobs. The employer accepts the job, based on the educational level and ability, as well as the health of the job applicant, whether they accept or not is their right. Suppose in the future, something happens to the job that the Buddhist son is doing that displeases the owner, and the owner immediately fires him. Of course the Buddhist son must be unemployed. When unemployed and want to get a job again, Buddhists must continue to pray and pray to worship roasted pig. If in a Buddhist family there are 10 children, each of whom must go to work when they reach adulthood, then do Buddhists all have to beg and sacrifice a roasted pig? If Buddhists believe that, then I also surrender, there is nothing more to say. When we believe something, we need to reason it out. Buddhists cannot close their eyes and believe blindly. If you believe like that, then what can you call a Buddhist? Please use your wisdom to consider this issue carefully. Second, if Buddhists are afraid of committing the crime of killing and having to suffer retribution later, then Buddhists should make offerings of fruit in return. Actually, whether to worship or not depends on the Buddhist's belief. If you believe, you have it; if you don't believe it, you don't have it. There is an ancient saying, spirit lies in the self, non-spirit lies in the self. Have there ever been times when Buddhists make offerings and some god comes to enjoy those offerings? Or everyone in the family, relatives and friends can enjoy it. Everyone enjoys the delicious fat and nutrients, while the sins committed are solely borne by Buddhists. So, are Buddhists committed to doing so? Buddhists firmly believe in cause and effect. Everything that happens to me, bad or good, is all caused by me. If we created good causes in our previous life, then in this life we will reap good results. On the contrary, if in the previous life or many previous lives we created bad causes, then in this life, when the mature result comes, we must accept it. Because cause and effect does not only happen in this life, it has gone through many lives. Buddhists must have a firm belief in the truth of cause and effect like that. Then nothing causes us fear. I do my own thing, without complaining or blaming anyone. I advise Buddhists to be wise and assess the problem. If Buddhists have faith in the three jewels and cause and effect, they should never listen to anyone. Because in life, no one has the right to decide for themselves, but everything, failure, success or failure, good or bad, is up to them to decide. You should believe in Buddha's teachings and try to do good. If you create good causes, of course there will be good results. Cause and effect never goes wrong, it just comes to you quickly or slowly. In short, our answers above are all based on the law of cause and effect, and we have a few words of advice. It's up to Buddhists to decide. 2. If you don't set up a Buddhist altar, can you chant sutras?
Question: Dear teacher, my house does not worship Buddha, only has an altar for my grandparents. Although I strongly believe in Buddhism, but because my family situation is cramped, I do not have an altar to worship Buddha. So I ask, can I chant?
Answer: Please tell me right away, there is no problem. However, here, we would also like to contribute a few more opinions, speaking more broadly about this issue. In terms of form and ritual, when chanting and worshipping, Buddhists need to set up an altar to Buddha, and must worship him in a solemn and pure place. Although Buddha or Bodhisattva are images, Buddhists must always respect and worship them. We worship Buddha because we remember his teachings. Because he is a completely enlightened person. Although Buddha passed away a long time ago, he still left us a priceless treasure of scriptures, including 3 collections of scriptures. Thanks to that, we can study and learn. And learn the way to practice and escape the suffering of life and death. Thus, his grace is so great that it is indescribable. Therefore, after taking refuge, Buddhists think of his great merit and should invite a Buddha statue home to worship. Worshipping him with the main purpose is for us to see his image, so that we can imitate and follow the example of his noble deeds of enlightenment and liberation. From there, we try to practice what he taught. We should apply those teachings in real, everyday life. Only then will worshipping him be beneficial. And worshipping Buddha like that is true to the meaning of worshipping Buddha. On the contrary, if we worship Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to pray for them to bestow blessings, exorcise evil spirits, relieve disasters, bless everyone in the family to always be healthy, and have peace all year round. Safe, no disaster occurs. Worshipping Buddha or Bodhisattva like that is a huge mistake. Worshipping with such a concept is no different from viewing Buddha or Bodhisattva as a deity. Worse still, some people even worry about making offerings as if they are paying bribes for their blessings. If it is not as desired, then they are not spiritual. Buddhas or Bodhisattvas are enlightened people. But we move them and turn them into positions to become protective gods. What a sinful delusion. Therefore, when Buddhists worship Buddha or Bodhisattva, they need to learn and clearly understand the meaning of this worship. If not, then we will bear a serious sin against them. Why do Buddhists worship their grandparents? Are Buddhists worshipping because they think about the merits of birth and the profound upbringing of their parents and grandparents? Parents and grandparents are just the people who gave us this physical form, but we still have to be grateful and respectfully worship them, not to mention the Buddha who taught us to have more wisdom and insight. And shows us a path to enlightenment and liberation. Forever free from birth and death and suffering. So, how great is his kindness to us? Therefore, worshipping Buddha in the family is also very important for lay Buddhists. Returning to the question of Buddhists, although Buddhists have faith in Buddhism, because of cramped family circumstances, they cannot set up a separate altar to worship Buddha. Although Buddhists do not worship Buddha, they still worship their ancestors. Worshipping ancestors is a very good thing, according to the traditional filial customs of Vietnamese people. Worshipping grandparents is a very precious thing. I wholeheartedly praise Buddhists. If a Buddhist's family situation is cramped, it is not possible to set up a separate Buddha altar. But when chanting and worshipping, Buddhists also want to have a Buddha image to admire and worship. In my opinion, Buddhists should be flexible. Instead of having an altar for grandparents, why don't Buddhists worship Buddha above? Buddhists should find a way to create some means to make it suitable. This means worshipping both grandparents and Buddha. That way, you get both benefits. Because grandparents also have to respect Buddha, so worshipping Buddha on the upper floor. And worshipping grandparents on the lower floor, there is nothing wrong with disrespect. And worshipping like that doesn't take up any other cramped space. Because of the circumstances I have to do that. Buddha and grandparents do not blame Buddhists. On the contrary, not only do they not blame them, they also have more compassion for Buddhists. Because we know that Buddhists are good-hearted and filial people, but because of cramped family circumstances, we have to worship like that. I sincerely advise Buddhists to do the same. Because of worshipping Buddha, when Buddhists chant, worship, and see images of the Buddha or Bodhisattva's good appearance, it increases the Buddhist's faith and reverence towards the three jewels. And therefore, the chanting of Buddhists becomes even more earnest and sincere. Thanks to that, the hearts of Buddhists feel even more joyful, peaceful and gentle. This is also a very important thing for spiritual life. Buddhists, please observe your mind and consider carefully, that is to say according to the external appearance, but when talking about the internal nature, Buddhists often turn to their own mind to reflect every moment, not allowing afflictions to arise. In this way, Buddhists are worshipping Buddha, and truly Buddhists respect Buddha very much. Because everyone has Buddha. Worship Buddha externally to clarify Buddha's own mind. Worshipping Buddha like that is truly complete truth. And worshipping Buddha like that is truly true to the meaning of worshipping Buddha. We respectfully hope that Buddhists must worship both Buddhas like that. Only by worshipping like this can one hope to escape suffering. If we only know that there is a Buddha outside, then it really does not correspond to the meaning of worshipping Buddha. 3. Is it wrong to see a Buddha image when reciting Buddha's name?
Question, Dear teacher, at the time of reciting the Buddha's merits, in my mind I often wish to see the image of Amitabha Buddha and the image of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. I would like to ask, is there anything wrong with that desire?
Answer, please tell me, even while you are reciting the Buddha's name, it is truly a mistake to make false wishes like that. This mistake should be avoided. Lin Hu should remember, the Buddha taught us to recite the Buddha's name with the deepest intention to help us eliminate afflictions and calm our minds. Reciting Buddha's name without a peaceful mind means we are reciting Buddha's name wrongly. It should be the same when reciting the Buddha's name with merit or without merit. On the contrary, if you don't recite Buddha's name like that, but still recite Buddha's name with an idle mind hoping to see images of Buddha and Bodhisattva, then that is a very big mistake. Why? Because if there is desire, there is delusion. If you still have false thoughts when reciting the Buddha's name, how can you be compatible with the method of reciting the Buddha's name? And so, it is contrary to the principle of reciting the Buddha's name that the Buddha taught. I would like to repeat for all of you to pay attention. The main purpose of reciting the Buddha's name is to eliminate afflictions. If afflictions are reduced, then our mind will be at peace. If the mind is peaceful, then there will be benefits in this life, and in the future there will be hope of rebirth. Because the mind has peace, it is compatible with the realm of ultimate bliss that we are aiming for. But here, on the contrary, while reciting Buddha's name but also having a false mind wishing to see Buddha and Bodhisattva, that is contrary to Buddha's recitation. When reciting the Buddha's name, the practitioner only concentrates on the Buddha's chant and should not think about anything. The patriarchs often taught, mind and voice must be in harmony with each other and must be recited clearly. Although there are many ways to recite the Buddha's name, the best way is still to recite the Buddha's name. But no matter how you recite Buddha's name, the ultimate taboo is having false expectations. Any desire for anything is a disease. It is a disease of delusion and affliction. The most taboo is to wish to see Buddha images outside. Having false wishes, even if they wish to see the Buddha, is just delusional affliction. If there is affliction, it is contrary to the truth and principle of reciting the Buddha's name. Remember, everything comes from the mind. If when you want to see the Buddha, then that wish is an illusion. As long as there are false thoughts, there will still be birth and death. Of course there will also be happiness and sadness, satisfaction or dissatisfaction. If you like it, you're happy, if you don't, you're sad. Those are the happy and sad ghosts that lead all beings. This is reciting sadness and happiness, not reciting Buddha's name. This is very important, and we all need to pay attention. Some people, when they recite the Buddha's name, instead of focusing their mind on the Buddha's name, allowing their mind to be pure and peaceful, they dream of seeing a Buddha image outside. When they saw the Buddha statue appear outside, they were very happy, thinking it was the result of reciting the Buddha's name. From then on, every time they chant Buddha's name, they begin to wish to see Buddha like that. Lean must remember, all scenes are from the mind. Whether good or bad scenes come from the mind. Buddha taught us to recite Buddha's name to calm our mind. Only with peace can there be wisdom. When there is wisdom and concentration, there is no affliction. If you don't have troubles, then you can have one mind. That is the main thing that in the Amitabha Minor Sutra, Shakyamuni Buddha taught us. Reciting the Buddha's name is to gradually reach the point of one mind without chaos. Such reciting the Buddha's name is in accordance with the Buddha's teachings. If you still have a wishful thinking mind, you are still running after external conditions. As for the external predestined situation, that is the door to being easily led by ghosts. Even if you actually see the Buddha in his body, it is still not seeing the Buddha, let alone seeing the Buddha through an image. In the Diamond Prajna Sutra, Buddha once taught, due to the weakness of seeing oneself, the sound of the bridge falls. Nan practices evil ways, unable to see Tathagata, mean, if anyone thinks that seeing the Buddha's form means seeing the Buddha, or hearing the sound of the Buddha preaching, they start the mind to seek the Buddha. Buddha said, that person is truly practicing evil religion, he will never see the Tathagata. Why? Also in this sutra, in another passage, the Buddha said, everyone who possesses false appearances, who has weak views of all non-appearances, is the view of the Tathagata. Meaning, everything that has a form is a lie. If you see the forms, which are not true forms, then only can you see the Tathagata. The Tathagata is neither born nor destroyed, and all appearances are illusory and untrue. If it's a lie, then why do we wish for it? Buddhists should remember, Buddha taught, to seek Buddha outside of the mind is heresy, so, how should people who want to see Buddha see it? You must see that there is no place to see, that is to say, you must see that there is no place to live and the mind will arise. If you have a mind that is attached to any scene, it is all evil, not seeing the real Buddha. The true Buddha must be in your own mind. When your mind quiets all delusions, then your true Buddha will appear, no need to search far. If you still have the mind to search, that's wrong. To put it more clearly, I have lost my real Buddha. Because the Buddha was born in India and lived for 80 years and then passed away, that Buddha was also a fake Buddha. Because that Buddha has birth and death, now, when people go through India, no one sees Shakyamuni Buddha anymore. The Buddha has a physical body with 32 good features and 80 beauties, but it is not real. How can a Buddha created by people using iron and cement or paper would be real? If you practice with the wrong mind, that is the clue of the devil leading you. If the practitioner is not skillful, it will be extremely dangerous. We should remember that ghosts have 5 magical powers, they can appear anything they want. Depending on your wishes, whatever you like, it will appear. In the past, Patriarch Yu Ba Siu Sida, the 4th patriarch in India, was mistaken when he appeared in the image of the Buddha and the saints. Even though you are an patriarch, you still mistakenly think you are a Buddha, so what happens to ordinary vegetarians like us? You yourself are already a demon, but you don't bother to find a way to eliminate them. But you still hope to see this and that. That's a demon piling up more ghosts. Even worse, some people even brag to everyone, claiming that they have seen Buddha when they recite Buddha's name. How do you see Buddha? They replied that they saw a paper Buddha statue. If you see a paper Buddha statue, there is nothing difficult. We just open our eyes and see. There's no need to wait until you recite Buddha's name to see that image. Thus, it is clear that they see with their false thoughts. But still show it off to everyone. People who don't understand, when they hear it, think that they have practiced well, because thanks to practicing well, they can see the Buddha. On the contrary. For those who have a little experience in spiritual practice, or who have carefully studied the Buddha's teachings, upon hearing that, they become afraid and feel sorry for that person. Because they know that person is wrong. But because that person already carries a heavy burden of prejudice, even if they sincerely advise, it will not be easy for that person to give up. In ancient times, the first founder of the Lin Tong sect, Great Master Hu Vien, when entering Samadhi, while in Samadhi, he saw the Western Holy Land appear 3 times. But he absolutely did not dare to open his lips. Because you are afraid that people will misunderstand you and seek false appearances, that is extremely harmful. So the patriarch remained silent and never revealed it to anyone. It was not until he was about to pass away that the patriarch told his disciples, we should remember, he saw the holy scene while entering concentration, because of entering concentration, his mind was pure and peaceful, so it corresponded to the scene of ultimate bliss. Therefore, the scene of ecstasy appeared, not because he was looking for it in vain. That is something we should pay careful attention to, on the contrary, if we haven't achieved that yet. If we start to wish for it, we will easily be led by demons. And our seeing is due to false thoughts, it only appears, not the truth. If we are not skillful in letting go, if we continue to indulge in pursuing that false scene, one day we will become mentally ill. By the time we are led by ghosts down the path of chaos, by the time we repent, it will be too late. If only we should avoid the cause, then there will be no effect. Once you have a serious illness, there is no cure. That is a very harmful and dangerous thing that we sincerely advise practitioners to be cautious and careful with. In short, when reciting the Buddha's name, keep firmly grasping the 6 words Amitabha and concentrate on reciting it. Don't give up the mind of hoping to see anything. When your mind is calm and pure, then there's no need to worry that you won't see the Buddha. Because at that time, the mind of the liaison and the Buddha's mind are compatible with each other, meaning they have the same frequency, so they will definitely meet each other. We hope that all of you will pay careful attention to this issue. We wish you success in reciting Buddha's name and praying for rebirth. 4. Because of hot temper, happiness in the family is lost.
Question, dear teacher, in the past my personality was very hot-tempered. I often quarreled and fought with my husband. He could not stand my hot-tempered, stubborn and arrogant nature, so he left home and left me to raise 3 sons. Now that my children have grown up, now that I think back, I feel very sorry for my husband, and I am forever feeling guilty and remorseful for the sins I have committed. So I ask, is there any way for me to reduce this sin?
Answer, I deeply sympathize with the feelings of Buddhists. Impatience is the rough manifestation of anger. Anger is one of the 6 basic afflictions: greed, anger, ignorance, arrogance, doubt, and evil views. To put it more succinctly, the affliction of anger is one of the 3 poisons: greed, anger, ignorance. The reason why we call them fundamental is because these afflictions have very deep roots and are difficult to eliminate. They are not only present in this life, but have existed for countless lifetimes. Humanity suffers and is always insecure because of them. No one doesn't have these things. But whether their appearance is heavy or light, strong or weak, depends on each person's effort and practice. This use of practice is not only in this life but also in many previous lives. Therefore, when they are present, they have different weights, strengths, and weaknesses. If a person has a deep habit of anger and they do not know how to cultivate their mind and improve their nature, of course their temper will be very violent and fierce. They dare to kill people and commit many heinous crimes, which we cannot predict. On the contrary, if a skillful person knows how to practice diligently, then their current intensity will be relatively less. Through the presentation of Buddhists' habit of anger is quite deep and strong, so they appear hot and fierce. Anger, basic and dependent on afflictions, although they have deep roots. Their nature is that they are false and not real. Because they are not real, when we practice, we can transform them. Venerable Vin Jia Huin Jiak said in his Tao Ca, 3 poisoned water cells appear one after another. Meaning, these 3 things, greed, anger, ignorance, they are just bubbles of water that float and sink uncertainly. Because their reality is inherently false and unreal. If they are real, how can we transform them? And so, how can one practice to become a Buddha? They discovered that turbulence arose depending on fate. Only when encountering situations that are contrary to one's wishes and desires, they will appear. Normally we don't recognize them. Therefore, mind-only studies call them habits. Even though they are not real, when they appear and we follow their orders and act, the consequences will cause great harm, possibly causing mass murder without knowing how to act. Their ability is very strong like that. A little worse, beating, cursing, scolding, etc. The case of Buddhists is in a milder form, just cursing and being rude. However, even though it is mild, the consequences also bring harm, loss of happiness and harmony in the family. Specifically, the evidence is that the Buddhist's husband had to leave home. Thus, it proves that he no longer has the strength to endure the severe torture of Buddhists. The only way left is to leave home. The man is the breadwinner in the family, has heavy responsibilities and is quite patient, but he has to leave home, which proves that the Buddhists' treatment of him is also very harsh. That's why Buddhists now think back and repent of the mistakes they have made. Any repentance is too late. Just by avoiding the cause, there will be no effect. Unfortunately, perhaps in the past, Buddhists were lacking in practice, because they did not understand the principles, so they had such gestures and actions. Or maybe because of certain circumstances, Buddhists are forced to be like that. Although this happened a long time ago, Buddhists now know how to repent, which is a very good thing. Buddha taught, as humans, no one is perfect, no one is without mistakes. Confucius also said, there are no perfections. Because people still live in the cycle of karmic ignorance, they more or less cause bad karma. But when you have made a mistake and know how to repent, those mistakes will eventually end. I'm just afraid that if you commit a sin and don't know how to repent, that sin will only get worse and worse. In the case of mistakes committed by Buddhists, according to the law of cause and effect, Buddhists must more or less have retribution. Since there is a cause, of course there must be an effect. However, this retribution has different levels of severity. If today's Buddhists know how to practice, do good and avoid evil, accumulate merit and build virtue, and repent for the crime of being arrogant, carrying out verbal karma, and severely bullying their husbands, then surely the sins committed when over time it will lessen, that is, the heaviness will turn into lightness. Therefore, it should be said that cultivating is transforming karma. If karma cannot be changed, then why would anyone practice making it more tiring? That is, we point out the general nature of creating bad karma and knowing how to repent. As for the Buddhist case, if you want to end the feeling of guilt, the best concrete solution is for the Buddhist to boldly and courageously apologize to him for the things that have caused the discord. Atmosphere in the past. Sorry, I don't know if he's still alive. If he were willing to forgive and forget everything, then Buddhists would have nothing to regret or feel guilty about anymore. If he still stubbornly refuses to forgive and let go, then Buddhists have nothing to worry about, because Buddhists already know their mistakes and apologize. In my opinion, that is the best solution. But I don't know if Buddhists have enough courage or not. Knowing you have made a mistake and apologizing, this is a normal thing in life, there is nothing to be proud of, or feel self-conscious about. Through the suggestions we have presented above, Buddhists, please rest assured and do not feel guilty anymore. Because you still carry a heavy sense of guilt, it is also a huge obstacle on the path of Buddhist practice. Whatever has passed, let it pass. Even if I think about it, it's already over. It's best to try to learn to live in the present moment. I sincerely advise Buddhists to focus on reciting Buddha's name, chanting sutras, repenting and doing more good deeds, so that their sins become lighter and lighter. That is the best thing, and Buddhists must strive to practice and recite. We wish Buddhists happiness, health, and diligence on their path of practice. 5. Anxious because of living alone, but when communicating, one feels dissatisfied and cannot stand deceit.
Question: Dear teacher, I have 3 questions that have been nagging me for a long time, lingering in my heart and unable to be resolved. 1. I'm currently living alone, so I'm very scared that when I get sick, no one will know, and my age is now over 50, even if I go to school, no one will hire me. 2. My personality is quick-tempered, so I don't like being around people who only know how to live a false life on the outside, easily causing bad things, even if they are relatives. 3. I'm very afraid of committing the crime of killing. I want to become a vegetarian, but I can't. Please be compassionate and guide me to understand what to do to make things right.
Answer: Buddhists have raised 3 questions. I would like to follow each issue in turn, and add a few small comments to Buddhists. Hopefully it will alleviate some of the worries and problems of Buddhists today. 1. Buddhists currently live alone, so Buddhists are very worried that when they fall ill, no one will know to take care of them. Buddhists are right to worry about this issue. However, I think Buddhists should not worry too much. In the Buddhist scriptures, it is taught, there are things to worry about but are not worried about. Conversely, there are things that are not worth worrying about but are worried about. What are the things to worry about? The thing to worry about is: am I currently cultivating a lot of merit? Every day, do I diligently recite Buddha's name, do good deeds, cultivate my mind and improve my own nature, and do I wholeheartedly help others? That means, have I really prepared for the day I leave this world? Because the day I leave forever, that will truly be a lonely journey. And the material assets that I have built up all my life, when I finally close my eyes, I wonder if I can take anything with me, or leave everything behind for life. As for the rest, I can only carry 2 things with me, good karma and bad karma. So, I want my future to be happy and enjoy good blessings, so why don't I worry about cultivating merit now? That's something to worry about. But I forgot to pay attention to it. What are things not to worry about? Birth, old age, illness, death. These are 4 great human sufferings, which no one can avoid. What I cannot avoid, I wonder if I should worry or not. Because, no matter how worried I am, those things still happen to me. Illness is something that no one can avoid. If there is a body, there must be illness. It is a law, a natural process. If that's the case, then worrying is just a waste of effort. Australia is a relatively highly civilized country. Has all the physical amenities. Furthermore, in the health sector, the government is also very concerned about people, especially seniors living alone. When Buddhists are sick, they just need to pick up the phone and call and someone will come to help immediately. If you are seriously ill, an ambulance will come and take you to the hospital. As for the issue of care, even if it's your own blood relatives, you probably won't be able to take care of them as well as the nurses here. Nurses serve patients with all their hearts and professional conscience. They are people who treat patients very well. So, why are Buddhists still worried and tired, too? Coming to the second issue, Buddhists should know that every person born has their own karma. No one is the same. Even if they are siblings of the same bloodline, they are not the same. Body and mind are not the same. When growing up, each person absorbs different living environments. Different from education, family and society. So, how can you say this person is exactly like that person? Living in a society, everything is closely related to each other. Even if I want to separate myself from society, I can't. Right now, how can I survive? Is it all thanks to that? In Buddhism, it is called interdependence, a relationship that forms. In other words, it is created by cause and effect, interdependent and interpenetrating each other. Like clothes, food, medicine, etc., do all Buddhists make them? I did not create it. Others created it, so I have the means to live, so I owe it to those who created it, so, are those people all my benefactors? Since we are benefactors to each other, should we respect or hate each other? Does anyone hate those who do favors for them? If so, then I have truly lost my humanity. If so, I am no longer worthy of being human. Because of such thinking, I feel that everyone is pitiful and worthy of my respect. As mentioned above, due to different karma, each person's personality is different. That personality comes about due to training in different living environments. As Buddhists confirm, because Buddhists are hot-tempered, they do not want to be close and communicate with people who only know how to live in vain and pretend on the outside. That's why Buddhists want to stay away from them. Considering others, we must think again about ourselves. People have bad habits, but are we all good? Or maybe I also have bad habits that I don't like, but I don't see them. So in communication, we have the right to choose friends to make friends with. But we absolutely should not criticize other people's personalities. In this world, no one is 100% perfect. Except for one person. That is Buddha. Buddha said, Bodhisattvas still have some subtle ignorance. The reason we talk at such length is to let Buddhists see clearly the different karma of each person. From there, Buddhists will have a more open and broader view. As for whether to socialize or not, that is the Buddhist's right to choose. If we see that the closeness is back and forth, there are a lot of troubles that we don't like, then it's better to avoid them. But Buddhists should remember that we cannot live alone. Even though I don't interact with my friends or relatives much, I should at least have a few close friends, so that in times of trouble, we can support each other sooner or later. People say, distant relatives are not as good as near neighbors. As above, Buddhists are afraid of living alone without anyone, but Buddhists do not want to communicate with close friends. Thus, Buddhists fall into a state of contradiction. Buddhists should remember that as long as we treat others well, even if that person doesn't help us, there will still be others who will help us. That is the law of cause and effect. If you treat everyone well, you will have good results, no one will leave you. Buddhists should firmly believe in the law of cause and effect in their actions to create a more joyful and meaningful life for themselves. 3. The third problem is that clearly the karma of Buddhists who like to eat meat and fish is still heavy. Even though my heart wants to be a vegetarian, my mouth and tongue do not allow it. So in the end Buddhists must follow their mouth and tongue to let them be satisfied. Buddhists, you see, even the issue of vegetarianism and non-vegetarianism is already a difficult decision, not to mention other lofty matters. However, currently Buddhists are practicing at home, that is, practicing according to the human vehicle. Buddhists vow to be vegetarian for a few days. Then a few days are good. Buddha does not force anyone. If Buddhists still like salty food, it's okay to eat it. But the important thing is that Buddhists should not kill living things. To satisfy the needs of the tongue is not advisable. Because that is committing the crime of killing. Buddhists should remember, thought it was delicious and fat, who would have thought that injustice would turn around to repay the loan. In addition, it is okay for Buddhists to buy meat and fish at the market and people sell it to cook. If you can't be a vegetarian, keeping a vegetarian diet is also good. When Buddhists feel tired of meat and fish, they will become vegetarian. Wishing Buddhists a happy life and always diligent practice. 6. The issue of the meaning of the lotus flower.
Question: Dear teacher, every time I go to the temple and look at the Buddha table, I see the Buddha statue sitting on a lotus throne, but honestly, I don't understand the meaning of the lotus image. But when you enter the temple, you can see lotus flowers everywhere you look. I hope you explain it so we can understand. Thank you, teacher.
Answer: Buddhists' questions about the typical meaning of the lotus image are reasonable and very interesting. Because of the meaning of the lotus, in Buddhism it is very widely explained, and the lotus is highly valued. It can be said that the lotus flower is a characteristic, which is mentioned in most of the Buddhist scriptures, Theravada and development. An important set of Mahayana sutras, which most Buddhists of Northern Buddhism have more or less read, not only read and recite, but are also interested in studying and learning, is the Lotus Sutra of the Wonderful Dharma. In addition, the lotus is also symbolized in other areas, bearing the cultural specificity of each Buddhist country. Especially in Asian Buddhist countries, typically China and Vietnam, lotus flowers are displayed in temples or through union flags or other badges of some Buddhist organizations. Like the Buddhist family group, for example. And among the Buddhist sects, there is a sect that named a sect after the lotus flower, which is Pure Land sect, also known as Lean sect. Thus, it shows us in a general way how important the image of the lotus flower in Buddhism is and its profound meaning. Therefore, here we would only like to briefly explain, through a few typical hidden features in Buddhist teachings, the lotus flower has the following 8 wonderful properties: 1. No infection. 2. Punishment. 3. Be patient. 4. Vien Dung 5. Tan Luong. 6. Direct action. 7. Nonsense. 8. Food bubbles. 1. Untainted properties. Even though the lotus flower grows from mud, its nature still does not carry the foul smell of mud. Vietnamese Ca Dao has an article about this immaculate characteristic, in what beautiful dress with lotus, green leaves, white flowers, and yellow pistils, white flowers, green leaves, nearly mud that does not stink of mud, even though it has been lying in the mud for many days, the lotus flower still waits for the day to rise out of the water, to bloom and then show off its fragrance, radiating its fragrant scent throughout the world. We see that mud and flowers have nothing to do with each other. Mud symbolizes defilements, while lotus symbolizes purity. This, to express the profound meaning that Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are born, they still live in the stream of life, but they are never contaminated. That's how living in the ceiling and not being contaminated by the ceiling is like that. On the contrary, we are different. Wherever we touch, we are infected. Although in each of us, there is this immaculate lotus flower. The lotus flower is a metaphor for each of us. Everyone has Buddha nature. But Buddha nature is inherently untainted. Because its nature is pure and clear. But because we follow the flow of ignorance and false karma, we create many sins, and then get stuck in the world of pollution. That is the first characteristic. 2. Ton ton is internal slang. The special thing is that wherever lotus flowers grow, the water is never cloudy. Therefore, when we pick lotus flowers, there is no need to wash them, because lotus flowers are not contaminated with mud. Because its nature is inherently punitive. This represents the symbolic meaning that wherever Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are born, that place will bring peace and coolness to living beings. On the contrary, wherever there are evil and dishonest elements, there will certainly be many troublesome and harmful things happening there. This purifying property is not found in other flowers. This characteristic, if we know how to apply it skillfully in everyday life, is also very beneficial. Why? Because if we are constantly silent about impurities and afflictions, then the water of our mind lake will be pure and refreshing. Without suffering, of course we will immediately have peace and happiness. 3. Patience. As we know, the lotus is a type of herb, which is a type that sprouts from the previous year's roots. The lotus flower has a very interesting characteristic of patience. Its roots lie in the mud for a long time, waiting for the right conditions to sprout. That waiting is the virtue of patience. This virtue is very necessary in our daily lives. Anyone who has this quality of patience will certainly easily achieve success when doing anything. Otherwise, it is difficult to achieve, many times, because something very small happens, we don't have the patience to get through it, let alone the big thing. In life's affairs as well as religious affairs, to have good results, of course, we must have this virtue of patience. If not, it is difficult to succeed in any field. Therefore, the virtue of patience is an essential virtue in an upward, sublimated life, just like a lotus flower patiently rising to find a beautiful life. 4. Perfect nature. This virtue is unique to only lotus flowers. Because the lotus has petals that cover a round lotus mirror. This is representative of the fully enlightened nature of every existing sentient being. The nature of perfect enlightenment is beyond the scope of causes and conditions. From the time it blooms until it withers, the lotus flower is not damaged by bees or butterflies, unlike other flowers where bees and butterflies flock to it and suck the pistil. This shows that the enlightened nature is round and unobstructed, no scene can destroy or pollute it. 5. Tan Luong, normally. Flowers bloom in spring, because spring is a cool season. On the contrary, they cannot bloom in fall or winter. Because autumn is a season with frequent drizzle, and winter is cold. Therefore, it is not suitable for flowers that bloom with pistils. Unlike other flowers, lotus flowers bloom in the summer, which is a hot season. This, to express the meaning of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who were born in the world of the 5 impurities, sentient beings filled with afflictions, oppression and discomfort, they brought the nectar of compassion to irrigate and cool everyone. People, in the middle of a hot and sultry summer, the lotus flower still defies that heat and still grows, to show that, even though we are living in a firehouse of the 3 realms, being burned by the fires of desire, hope, greed, anger, ignorance, but we still try to be patient and endure to overcome it. At the same time, use Dharma water to water and cool the soul. 6. Direct action refers to a straight body. There is no flower that grows with a body, lotus stem, straight like a lotus. This, to represent, practitioners need to straighten their body and mind. In the Vimalakirti Sutra there is a saying, the direct mind is the enlightenment. Even if we live in any unfavorable situation, or in any place where our mind is straight, that is, we do not think on both sides, yes, no, right, wrong, etc., even in the middle of the market, then we also turn that place into an ashram. The ashram is a pure place. Thus, uprightness is a virtue that Buddhists need to apply and practice in real life. Only then will we have benefits, like the lotus flower growing straight up from the mud and then showing off its fragrance and beauty. 7. Emptiness. Although the lotus body is upright, its insides are empty. This special point conveys a very profound meaning. Practitioners need to have joy and equanimity. Bodhisattvas always practice these 2 virtues. When we talk about joy and equanimity, we immediately think of Bodhisattva Maitreya. Lord Maitreya sat with a stony belly, all the dust from the world clings and then falls, even though life is full of hardships, indifferent like a peaceful smile. For Maitreya Bodhisattva, everything that comes and goes is just a peaceful smile. A smile when seeing, eyes only see color, the ear hears the sound, but after hearing it, it doesn't, silent and inert in the heart, gently I walk, within the nakedness of anyone. 8. Bong Tuk. Other flowers, when the flower withers, buds into fruit and has seeds. On the contrary, lotus flowers are not like that. When the lotus blooms, it already has a mirror and seeds. It is cause and effect simultaneously. This speaks of a philosophy of life. Cause and effect are never different. Cause and effect are like shape and shadow. Whatever the shape is, the shadow is like that. Therefore, if we want our life to be peaceful, fresh, and fragrant like a lotus flower, we should remember the principle of cause and effect and act virtuously, to benefit ourselves and others, then we will surely be successful. There is happiness and peace right in real life, no need to waste effort looking somewhere far away. Nirvana or suffering, ultimately lies in our mind. Above, we only briefly outline and present the characteristics of the lotus flower. In fact, the meaning of the lotus flower is very profound and cannot be fully explained. However, through the above 8 typical characteristics, I think it is enough for us to partly understand the philosophy and symbolic image of the lotus in Buddhism. 7. The issue of mourning for parents.
Question: Dear teacher, in case my parents die in Vietnam, but due to unsatisfactory circumstances, I cannot return to mourn for my parents, I can go to the temple here to request a funeral service, and after 49 days, please release your mourning. I would like to ask, is that possible?
Answer: Please tell me right away, there is no problem. In the case of Buddhists, due to some very special and unexpected circumstances, when they hear that their father or mother has passed away and cannot return to Vietnam to attend the funeral, the Buddhist and their immediate family will you can go to the temple to ask the monks and nuns to perform the funeral ceremony. This, in my opinion, is not disrespectful or awkward at all. It should be added that funeral arrangements are a custom originating from Confucianism. In Buddhism, there is no mention of mourning clothes. Mourning is a form of expressing a child's sincerity and filial piety. The concept of our ancestors considers death as birth. When we are alive, how we treat our relatives like our grandparents, parents, etc., we will also behave that way when we die. Therefore, mourning is a formal ritual to express the longing for the deceased. In the past, funerals took a long time and required a great wall worshipping ceremony. Big wall is 2 years, small wall is 1 year. Therefore, in the past, children and grandchildren had to mourn for their parents and grandparents for exactly 2 years. That means having to go through the great death anniversary ceremony. But later on, people decreased the number of times. Because of the long period of mourning, there are many inconveniences and obstacles, especially in matters of marriage or business, etc. Since then, our people no longer follow the old customs anymore. Now, usually after 49 days, descendants can hold a funeral ceremony. Thus, Buddhists can go to the pagoda to ask the venerable monks and nuns to perform the longevity in mourning rituals. This is because of force majeure circumstances, but in fact Buddhists do not want that. Because my parents or grandparents are the closest relatives in my life, I should have returned home to mourn in order to be a proper child, but circumstances forced me to do so. Please rest assured, Buddhists, no one blames Buddhists when circumstances do not allow it. 8. Difference between knowledge and wisdom.
Question: Dear teacher, for a long time I have been wondering about the difference between knowledge and wisdom. I don't understand why Buddhism only mentions wisdom, but not intelligence? Dear teacher, please answer so we can understand clearly.
Answer: According to Buddhism, in terms of cognitive phenomena, there is a difference between knowledge and wisdom. But it's no different, if we look at it from an ontological standpoint. Because consciousness does not exist outside of the mind. Like waves that do not leave the water but exist. But waves are not water, although water is still hidden in the waves. Therefore, it is impossible to determine whether there is one or two between waves and water. According to the principle of non-duality, waves are water and water is waves. Because of two things, saying one is wrong, but saying two is not right. The same is true between mind and consciousness. In terms of phenomena, it is said to be consciousness. From an ontological standpoint, it is said to be wisdom. In other words, consciousness is function and wisdom is body. However, if considered in the common sense that people often say, between knowledge and wisdom used in Buddhism, their meanings are very different. Because the wisdom of the world says, it is the type of knowledge that comes from accumulating experience. To be more specific, it is due to learning and accumulating from the surrounding environment. Like absorbing experiences through all areas of life from family, school, and society. In Buddhism, this is called master wisdom. That is, knowledge is temporarily brought in by borrowing from outside. On the contrary. Wisdom is also called non-master wisdom, which means wisdom that cannot be borrowed from outside. It exists on its own, but the reason it cannot manifest is because afflictions block it. Once afflictions are gone, wisdom will appear. For example, the nature of a mirror is clear, but because there is too much dust, the light of the mirror cannot be revealed. The nature of the moon is bright, but it is covered by dense clouds, so the moon's light cannot be revealed. The dust clears, the mirror shines, the clouds disappear, the moon appears. Likewise, when the clouds of ignorance and afflictions disappear, the sun of wisdom will appear. Because of that characteristic, the Buddhists call it wisdom, or Buddha nature, etc. This is to distinguish it from the wisdom that worldly people sometimes refer to. In short, knowledge is still within the scope of discrimination and attachment because of accumulating experience and borrowing from outside sources. This is the type of knowledge that belongs to the Dharma of existence, or omniscience. On the contrary, wisdom is the mind that is available, not borrowed from the outside. When this wisdom shines completely, without the slightest bit of irritability, ignorance, or afflictions obstructing it, it is called ultimate wisdom, that is, Buddhahood. 9. What is called career change?
Question: Dear teacher, I often hear that cultivating is about changing karma, but I don't know how to change karma. And what is karma that must be changed? Please answer so we can understand.
Answer: The word karma in Buddhism has a very profound meaning. Here, we will only give a general and brief answer. The original Sanskrit word karma is karma, the Chinese translation is karma. It means an action that is repeated many times and becomes a habit, so it is called karma. Like smoking karma, gambling karma, drinking alcohol karma, etc., like someone addicted to drugs, at first smoking or injecting 1 or 2 doses is okay, but when you do it many times, it becomes an addiction. Once you become addicted, you cannot do without it. At that time it had great power. It controls and orders us to follow its orders. That's why there is a saying, habits at first are just strangers passing by. Then become close friends, and finally become difficult bosses. Once we become a difficult boss, it is difficult for us to resist what the boss orders. That is an extremely harmful consequence. In addition, the word karma is also used in other professions. Like people who work together in the same teaching profession, people call them colleagues. In any profession, if we work together, we are called colleagues. Karma has many types. If speaking generally, there are 2 main types, good karma and bad karma. The place where karma originates and creates includes body, speech, and mind. Of these 3 things, the most important is intention. Mind karma is the calculations, comparisons, and distinctions. Only consciousness studies calls it distinguishing the scene of consciousness. It is actively creating karma. When it thinks good things, it motivates the mouth to say good things, and the body to do good things. On the contrary, when it thinks evil things, it incites its mouth to say evil, ferocious things and its body to act cruelly. These 3 karmas are the driving force that creates heaven or hell in the human world. All the sufferings and joys of humans, from individuals, to groups, and more broadly, to the whole society, are created by it. Therefore, in Buddhism, great attention is paid to these 3 important karma. The practice of Buddhists, Buddha taught, does not need to be practiced far away, we only need to practice and transform in these 3 karmas. Convert 3 bad karma into 3 good karma. As before, we often thought evilly, then spoke and acted evilly, such as cursing and scolding with our mouths, physically committing evil deeds, robbing people, killing people, etc. Now that we know how to practice, we should change. In exchange, decide not to create those evil things anymore. That means we skillfully know how to cultivate and skillfully transform the 3 karmas. Like before, because of foolish ignorance, we went down the path of addiction. Now we know that the harmful effects of this addiction are very dangerous, we decided to quit addiction, that is, we have transformed the karma of addiction into being free of addiction. When we are no longer addicted, our life is so happy and joyful, and we have so much freedom, we are no longer controlled by addiction. An individual who knows how to transform karma will benefit in the present and the future. If a family knows how to transform bad karma into good karma, that family will be happy, harmonious, and peaceful. And from there, spreading order, peace, happiness, and benefit to society is the goal that Buddhists aim for. In short, cultivating is transforming karma. If karma cannot be changed, no one can practice. Transformation means turning bad into good, turning evil into good, turning evil into right, turning bad into good, etc. The reason why we say change karma and not change karma is because the word change has a very broad meaning, not as profound as the word change. Like a broken house or a broken car, people also use the word repair. That's why we say major overhaul and minor overhaul. Therefore, we should talk about changing karma without talking about correcting karma. Because the word transfer implicitly refers to the inside, rather than the outside. Convert from bad ideas to good ideas. Therefore, Buddhism talks about changing karma without saying about correcting karma. We hope that we Buddhists should be aware of the suffering in the present and the future, and try to regularly cultivate the three good karma. Just preserve and cultivate the three karma, body, speech, and mind, to make it good, then it is guaranteed that our life will end suffering. That is the root of practice. Therefore, the sutra says, the three karmas are always pure, and they are the same as the Buddhas who visit the West. Going to the West means there will be no more suffering. 10. Difference between Arhat and Bodhisattva.
Question, dear teacher, I often hear about Arhats and Bodhisattvas, but I don't understand the difference between Arhats and Bodhisattvas. We hope that you will be merciful and give us a clear answer.
Answer, Arhats and Bodhisattvas have many differences. 1. Different names, Arhat, in Sanskrit called Arahat. Bodhisattva, called Bodhisattva in Sanskrit, transliterated as Bodhisattva. In short, Bodhisattva. 2. Difference in meaning, Arhat is just a transliteration of the Sanskrit word Arahat. The word Arahat or Arhat has three meanings: thieves, unborn and offering. To kill thieves is to kill all the enemies and afflictions in the mind. The enemies of affliction are very ferocious and fierce. Whatever afflictions are at their root, they kill them all, so they are called murderers. B. No birth is synonymous with nirvana. That means they have achieved a peaceful psychological state. No longer born and destroyed. To be clear, they are no longer in the cycle of birth and death. C. Responding to offerings, they are truly worthy of being offered to heaven and humans. Arhat has three meanings like that. What about the meaning of Bodhisattva? Bodhisattva has two meanings, one is sentient enlightenment, the other is sentient enlightenment. What is sentient being? Bodhisattva is also a human being like us, but is an enlightened human being, and after enlightenment, they bring that enlightenment to teach everyone to be enlightened like them, then they are called Bodhisattvas. Bodhisattva. Thus, anyone can be a Bodhisattva. If we study hard and have altruistic hearts, benefiting everyone. We are also called Bodhisattvas. In short, a Bodhisattva is just a human being, but an enlightened person who benefits himself and others, that is a Bodhisattva. 3. Different in form, Bodhisattvas do not necessarily have to be monks, but lay people can still be Bodhisattvas. Thus, Bodhisattvas have two classes, monastic and lay. On the contrary, Arhats must be monks, because they receive full ordination as bhikkhus, or samanas. 4. Differences in precepts, when an Arhat practices as a monk, he is called a bhikkhu and receives 250 precepts. When the fruit is attained, it is called Arhat. That is, they are heavy on physical appearance, not on gender. On the contrary, Bodhisattvas are heavy on precepts and have the three pure precepts. At the same time, he also takes 10 major precepts and 48 minor precepts, for a total of 58 precepts. That is to say, Bodhisattva left home. As for lay Bodhisattvas, there are 6 important precepts and 28 minor precepts. Saying 3 converging pure precepts means, tam is 3, gathering is group, pure is purity, precept is called prohibition. 3 pure precepts, that is, 3 groups of Bodhisattva precepts. 1 is to take the precepts, to put an end to evil things. The second is practicing good Dharma realms, doing good deeds. Third is the many benefits of sentient beings, saving all sentient beings. That is the difference in precepts. 5. Differences in mind. Arhats have a narrow mind, only worrying about saving themselves, not thinking about saving others. So they were reprimanded by the Buddha as, Agarwood does not stagnate, or, the body destroys wisdom. On the contrary, Bodhisattvas are praised by Buddha for having a very broad mind. They not only worry about saving themselves, but also always think about saving sentient beings. 6. Differences in practice. After hearing the Buddha preach the Four Noble Truths, suffering, origin, cessation, and path, they then applied it to practice. Thanks to that, they attained arhatship. That's why they are also called Ton Van. That is, by listening to the Buddha's teachings, one can practice and attain fruition. On the contrary, Bodhisattvas truly apply and practice the 6 dharmas. That is, almsgiving, morality, patience, diligence, meditation and wisdom. 7. Differences in fruition. Arhats attain nirvana, and their nirvana includes 2 types, residual nirvana and non-residual nirvana. On the contrary, the Bodhisattva is called the land of nirvana. Nirvana has no place or fixed place of abiding. 8. Differences in rebirth. After attaining enlightenment, arhats stay in nirvana without attaining rebirth. On the contrary, Bodhisattvas, in addition to benefiting themselves, always take the work of saving living beings to benefit all living beings without tiring. 9. Difference in original vow. Arhat's original vow when cultivating is only concerned with eliminating all afflictions and then attaining nirvana, not saving sentient beings. Even if there is, it won't be large. On the contrary, the original vows of Bodhisattvas are very vast, as Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva said, as long as hell is empty, he will become a Buddha, but who knows when hell will be empty. Indeed, that is such a great wish. 10. Differences in the process of attainment. Arahants from the status of ordinary people must go through the positions, such as the 4 noble paths, Nwan, Dan, Nan, first world and 3 fruitions, Sotapanna, 2 Daham and Anaham then reach arhatship. On the contrary, Bodhisattvas must go through 52 positions sequentially. From the position of 10 faiths, 10 pillars, 10 virtues, 10 dedications, 10 grounds, then step up to equal enlightenment and finally to wonderful enlightenment, which means Buddhahood. In summary, the difference between arhats and bodhisattvas roughly includes the following 10 main points: 1. Different in name, 2. Different in meaning, 3. Different in form. 4. Differences in precepts, 5. Differences in mindset, 6. Differences in practice, 7. Differences in status, 8. Different in terms of birth, 9. Difference in original vow, 10. Differences in the process of attainment.